Democrats have talked about flipping Texas blue for a long time. This cycle, they believe they may finally have a real shot. Between the Republican nominee, Texas State Attorney General Ken Paxton's long list of political baggage, which includes multiple impeachments, corruption allegations, and years of controversy, and President Donald Trump's tanking approval numbers, particularly among Latino voters. Democrats see a path to victory with their nominee, State Representative James Tallarico. Tallarico and I sat down at a coffee shop in Fort Worth, Texas, called Black Coffee, for a wide-ranging conversation on his state of the race and Republican efforts to make his masculinity a central issue in the campaign. Here's what he had to say. Those who are in Texas, Democrats in Texas, and people from around the country, people who are watching this right now and watching this Senate race and want to believe that this is the time, that after decades of one-party rule is going to change, why should they believe that this time is different?
Well, I think if anyone spends any time on the ground in Texas, they'll tell you that this is different.
Why?
The fact that we have at these events so many people showing up who have never voted for a Democrat or who have never voted before, I think shows you that something is growing on the ground. The number of people donated to this campaign, 600,000 individual people, the number of people signed up to volunteer, and then you see it at the ballot box. I mean, Congresswoman Crockett and I generated historic turnout in this primary together. And the number of young people who showed up in that primary was unprecedented. The number of Republicans who crossed over to vote in the Democratic primary was unprecedented. We, for the first time, outvoted the Republican Party in Texas for the first time in 20 years. And then now you see it in these polling numbers. I mean, we've never seen a Democrat in Texas polling ahead of a Republican opponent, at least in my lifetime. We've never seen that. So both the on-the-ground anecdotal evidence and the quantitative hard data all point to that this is the best shot we've had in 30 years to end one-party rule in Texas and elect a senator who's actually going to serve us and not their billionaire mega donors.
President Trump, speaking of billionaires, called you, quote, maybe the worst Texas candidate I have ever seen. Oh, no. He said you, quote, can't get elected as a vegan in Texas. You are not a vegan.
I'm not.
I have not seen you eat meat, but I've heard you do.
That's right.
I believe that you do.
It's been a big topic on the campaign trail.
I don't know if you heard it or not. Does it help or hurt you that the president is this personally invested in attacking and trying to beat you here?
Well, you know, the president's not a Texan, so he's not going to be able to cast a vote in this race. So what I care about is what do Texans think? And it's why I'm showing up.
But he has a big microphone when it comes to...
He does. He does. And I honestly get the sense that people across the spectrum, across the state, are tired of this politics as professional wrestling, right? You got these old guys lathered up in their fake tan, throwing corny nicknames right at each other. And those corny nicknames, they don't lower the price of groceries. They don't lower the price of gas. They don't lower the cost of housing and childcare and prescription drugs. They don't give anybody their voting rights. They don't address the maternal mortality crisis. And so what people are hungry for is elected officials who are going to do the work, who are going to bring both parties together and pass legislation that's actually going to make their lives easier and better and less stressful. And I'm putting my money on that. I really am.
There have been attacks on your masculinity, on lies about your sexuality, attacks on your partner. They've been like on a level 10, 12.
Sure.
Paxton has even begun to call you Low T Tallarico. What's your response to that?
Honestly, I had to look up what that meant. I don't think guys my age are really concerned about that kind of thing. But I think that these nicknames and these personal attacks don't actually meet the needs of Texans, right? Everywhere I go across the state, all I hear about is how folks are drowning, how those ends at the end of the month never seem to meet, and how people can't get by, they can't afford the basics, groceries and gas and insurance and prescription drugs, the things we need to survive. And they're looking desperately for elected leaders who are actually going to solve their problems. And so when you see Ken Paxton and the Republican Party attacking me personally, attacking my girlfriend, attacking my church and my pastor, I think it exposes the fact that they have no clue how to get this economy back on track. They have no solutions to lower people's costs and raise their pay. So if they have no affirmative argument to make the voters, I think that is a good sign for our chances in November.
One of the things that's so interesting is I don't think that the attacks on your masculinity are even about you. It feels largely that it is part of the 2026 Republican playbook to attack all Democratic men and even maybe some of the voters as soft and they're not tough enough to handle it. And it seems like an attempt to make further inroads with black men and Latino men. And I'm curious if you think of it that way. Or if you think about it at all. Maybe you don't spend a lot of time thinking about it.
You've seen on the campaign trail that I've welcomed this debate about what does it mean to be a real man? Because that seems to be what they want to talk about. So let's talk about it. I told the story at an event in Plano, Texas about my adoptive dad. I was born to a single mom. She worked overtime at a hotel to provide for me, to make sure I had a better life. I would say the luckiest day in both of our lives was the day we met Mark Tallarico, the man who gave me his last name, the man who raised me as his own. And I told the story about how every Saturday morning my dad would mow our lawn. Rain or shine, he insisted on mowing our lawn himself. And then, without anyone asking him to, he would go next door and mow our neighbor's lawn because she was elderly and a widow, and he never talked about it. He just did it. Every Saturday, he mowed both lawns. And so I grew up understanding that's what being a man is all about. It's taking responsibility. It is upholding your commitments to your family and to your neighbors. It's doing the right thing even when no one is watching. It's that strength, that character, that integrity. Real men don't lie and cheat their way through life. They don't enrich themselves by stealing from other people. They don't sell their soul to the highest bidder. I said it at that event, real men serve others, weak men serve themselves. And so I'm looking forward to having this debate about what it means to be a man, because they're trying to define it one way, and a lot of young men, the young men that are coming to our events, they're trying to figure that out in this changing world. And I want to provide them a different understanding of what being a man is all about, and I think it's resonating with people.
If you are elected, part of one of the biggest parts of the jobs of a senator is whether or not you vote to confirm, whether it be nominees, cabinet picks, judges. You would be sworn in on January 3rd, 2027. President Trump will have some group of people, whether it's cabinet secretaries or maybe Supreme Court justices. Would you vote to confirm any of those folks?
I'm gonna look at every single nominee that's in front of me for any position, whether it's judicial, whether it's a political appointment, and I'm going to evaluate the candidate on their merits. And if I have concerns, I obviously have deep concerns with a lot of the appointed members of his cabinet, especially the ones who've been using their office to enrich themselves and their friends and their family members. I have no problem standing up to anyone, including the President of the United States, to block a nominee that I think will be harmful for my constituents or for the people of this country.
But why give a vote in the affirmative for one of these folks that would join a group that you say is corrupt? Why give them your vote at all? Why not why not say I'm not voting for anybody? Let the Republicans.
Well, and I certainly won't vote for any corrupt cabinet officials. And if there's a history of corruption or any indication that there's going to be corruption, I'm going to be a solid no vote on those nominees. My hope, though, is that there is going to be an opportunity, hopefully with a Senate majority, hopefully with a House majority, to negotiate with the executive branch, to not only hold them accountable and keep them in check, but hopefully find common ground where we can appoint people who are actually going to serve the people of Texas, who are going to serve the people of this country. I know that may seem naive, but
not naive, but very hopeful. Maybe
it is.
Optimistic.
I guess I've seen that work. I mean, again, at the state capitol, it's a hard place to work as a Democrat.
Imagine.
And I was able to stand up when I needed to fight back when I needed to, whether it was the quorum break, whether it was fighting back against private school vouchers or historical whitewashing. I led the fight on all those book bans. But then I was also able to find common ground when that was possible on housing, on insulin, on childcare, on early childhood, on teacher pay. Like, I've seen that you can
figure it out
and must do both. Again, there's so many false choices in our politics. There's so much black and white thinking of you either have to either fight all the time or you have to compromise all the time. You have to find a way to do both at the right time. You have to fight when you have to, and you have to compromise when you can. And we need leaders in Washington who know the difference. Because we have a lot of Democrats who are willing to just lie down and not fight at all. And we have some who are willing to fight all day long and not actually get anything done. I think people want someone who's going to find a middle path there, who's going to push back and fight back when we need to, and someone who's going to work to find common ground when we can.